friends, I welcome you, and I thank you for being here today as we gather to remember and to celebrate the life of Marvin Ouwinga. We come with sadness, of course, because somebody who is so deeply loved is no longer with us in the way he once was. But we also come with deep gratitude for Marvin's life, for the goodness of it, the steadiness of it, the kindness and the intelligence and the humor that he brought into this world, and for the many ways that he blessed so many people over the years. Marvin was one of those people whose presence made this community better. He gave a great deal of himself as a teacher, as a historian, church member, friend, and neighbor. And of course, he was a beloved father, grandfather, uncle, so many things to his family. And he cared deeply about people, especially those who are the most vulnerable. And he lived with a generosity of spirit that touched many, many lives. So today, we come to give thanks for him and to commend him into God's eternal care, and to seek comfort and hope in the God who holds us in life, in death, and beyond death. I invite you to pray with me. Well, God, we come before you today with grateful hearts for the life of Marvin. We thank you for his gentle spirit, his calm presence, his love of learning, his sense of humor, his generous heart, his deep care for people. We thank you for the many ways he shared himself with this community and with the people he loved. Be with us now in this time of remembrance. Hold close those who mourn his loss. Comfort us in our sorrow. Steady us in your love. Remind us again that in life and in death, we belong to you. And in this Easter season, help us to hold on to the hope of the risen Christ, trusting that Marvin is safe in your mercy and peace. Amen. Our opening hymn this afternoon is number 476 in those black hymnals in the pews. The words will also be on the screen. The hymn is "My Life Flows On, an Endless Song. How Can I Keep From Singing?" And I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Meditation. this afternoon is from the book of Micah. This is Micah chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? And the gospel reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 through 40. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me." There are some people whose lives are so steady, so gracious, so quietly faithful, that when you think of them, certain words just naturally come to mind. With Marvin, the words that come to me are kindness, gentleness, intelligence, curiosity, generosity, and calm. Deep calm. The kind of calm that made you feel more settled just being around him. And that calm was real. At least it certainly seemed real to me. I never once saw Marvin lose his temper. I know his family might have had other experiences of Marvin. But I never saw him get rattled or harsh or sharp with people. Maybe he was just really good at hiding it, but that's possible. But I really suspect that it was just something deeper than that. It seemed that to be part of who he was. Marvin had that rare quality of being unflappable. Calm, cool, steady, gracious. It's one of the things that I always loved and admired about him. And yet, along with that steadiness, Marvin was anything but dull, not even close. He was a man of many talents and many interests, and he was a gifted historian and a teacher, of course, and generations of students were shaped by him through his years at Gould Academy, but he was also a painter, and some of his works are displayed in the chapel right now. He was a very good painter. He was a cook and a baker. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He loved puns and limericks and clearly delighted in language and wit. He served as historian for this church and as a trustee. He was one of those people who seemed to live with his mind and his heart fully engaged. And what I remember most vividly about my visits with Marvin, first at his home on Paradise, and later after Tinika's death at Schooner Estates in Auburn, every time I visited, I would look around and I'd just marvel at the reading material that he had everywhere. Newspapers, magazines, books, just laying out everywhere. So much of it I just could not imagine how one person could possibly have the time to read it all. And yet, with Marvin, I'm sure he did. He could converse on just about any topic, and not superficially either. He brought nuance, intelligence, research, up-to-date knowledge to whatever you were discussing. He loved learning, he loved ideas, and loved history, and he especially loved this place. He loved this town, and its stories, its people, its life. And there's something else that I always remember from those visits. Marvin always had French roast coffee to offer, always, every time. It seemed like maybe a small thing, but it said something about him. It spoke to his hospitality, his attentiveness, his generosity of spirit, and one thing I don't know if people know, that he served others through cooking and baking in ways. At the monthly community dinners at the Alliance Church, he often made meatballs to serve. And then there was the famous Oli Bolin.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry if I'm stealing some of the thunder. I'm sure that these things will be talked about. But you have to say, those Oli Bolin, those Dutch fried dough balls that he made, it was a secret recipe, I believe, and I think it's fair to say that he took the Freiburg Fair's fried dough to shape. He had a way of feeding people, literally and otherwise, and hospitality was simply part of who he was. And even later, when memory problems began to set in, that essential part of Marvin was still there. He could still converse. He could still connect. He could still be Marvin. There was still that thoughtful engagement, that curiosity, that warmth. The scriptures we heard today feel especially right for someone like him. In Micah, we hear that beautiful and famous question, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God? And if you wanted a simple and faithful summary of Marvin's life, that would not be a bad place to start. He did justice. He loved kindness, and he walked humbly. He cared deeply about those who were too often overlooked or pushed aside. The poor, immigrants, the dispossessed, prisoners of conscience, those without housing, those whose dignity was threatened. And this wasn't just abstract for him. It showed up in what he gave himself to, in the causes he supported, in the student groups that he founded and led, in the humanitarian organizations he championed, in his support of Amnesty International and Grace Street Ministry, homeless ministry in Portland. Marvin believed that every person mattered, and he believed in justice and equality, not as slogans, but as things that were to be lived. And what's so striking is he did this. He lived this way without any self-righteousness or swagger about it. He was just very quiet and humble about it. There's some people who care about justice in a way that somehow makes you feel scolded in their presence, but that was not Marvin. Marvin, his way was quieter than that. It was humbler and gentler. He lived what Micah describes. And that's important. And it's that passage from Matthew 25 where Jesus says, just as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. That too feels like Marvin, because he understood in a really deep way that our lives are not measured by our accomplishments, titles, degrees, or even talents. As wonderful as those things may be, our lives are measured by how we treat other people, especially the most vulnerable. Do we see them? Do we care? Do we respond? Do we live out the golden rule? Not just when it's easy, but as a way of life. Marvin did. He was a man of intellect. Yes, a scholar. Yes, a teacher. All those things, but he was also a man of heart. He did not let learning become detached from compassion. He didn't let knowledge become merely academic. He seems to have understood that what we know should deepen how we love, how we act, how we respond to suffering, how we honor the dignity of others. And of course, that's what made him such a fantastic teacher. And I suspect the students learned much more from him than history and Latin. They learned something about humanity, about decency, curiosity, compassion. And because this is still, we are in the Easter season, I just want to conclude by saying we give thanks for Marvin and we grieve his loss, but we do so as people who live in the light of the resurrection. And we do so trusting that death does not have the final word. And the love of God is stronger than death. Jesus told his disciples, "I will not leave you orphaned." And he promised that he was going ahead of them to prepare a place for them. And that promise belongs to us too. And so today, even in our sorrow, we dare to trust that Marvin is at home with God, held in that loving embrace, which nothing can break. Gathered now into that larger life and deeper peace that Christ has prepared. That doesn't take away the ache of missing him, but it does mean that we grieve with hope, with quiet confidence that Marvin is safe in God's mercy, and that love, in the end, will not let him go, or us go. So today we give thanks for Marvin, his mind, his humor, his artistry, his baking, his teaching, his service, all of those things. We give thanks for so many ways that he shaped this community and so many lives. And we honor him best not only by remembering him, but by following the path he walked so well. To do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. To care for the least of these. To live the golden rule. To do something kind in his honor, just as his obituary so beautifully put it. This is an invitation to care more deeply for this world and for the people in it. It's an invitation to live with grace. Thanks be to God for the life of Marvin. Amen. Now we'll sing hymn number 247, "My Shepherd is the Living God."
Amen.
now we begin a time of remembrance that will be begun by Marvin and Tinika's son, Rob.
Thank you all for coming. Rex, Marv, mortis est. Vivat Rex. Okay. How's this? All right. Let's do that again. Rex, Marv, mortis est. Vivat Rex. Thank you for being with us today. I love this church, this house of worship and of congregation. For a couple of years in the late 1970s, the Ouwinga family lived right across the street on the second floor of what is now the Gould Admissions Office. My sister and I drove the Chandlers downstairs crazy, always running back and forth above their heads. Space was a bit limited, so my parents tried to get Marlise and I to share a bedroom. That lasted maybe 2 days. Fortunately, there was a small alcove off the hallway, and my dad put his carpentry skills to use building a really cool bunk bed desk structure for me, and I happily moved my stuff over there. Looking back, there was in fact another bedroom with an actual door, but that was my dad's study. I don't think either of us kids ever questioned his claim to that space. In his study, Marvin had bookcases to the ceiling and a huge homemade plywood desk, always covered with great teetering piles of books and papers, the relics and detritus of his research and lesson plans. There were so many papers and books that when he wanted to work on something new, he would often have to bring the relevant materials out to the dining room table. Tinika was keenly alert to this mission creep, an attempt to establish limits on the size and location of these new stacks. It was the same when we lived on Elm Street, and then when they retired up on Paradise Hill, his study was always filled to capacity. Our dad's studies and love of academia were an inescapable and elemental presence in our lives growing up. When I was born, he was 4,000 miles away, taking graduate school exams. And I remember when we were very little, back in Kalamazoo, Michigan, there was a drawer in the fridge that held not food, but a draft of his dissertation. That being the safest place in case of a fire. Marv had the ability to truly focus on what he was reading. I came home one day and found the tea kettle boiled dry, glowing red hot and fused to the electric burner, while he read in the study next door. Marv was a perpetual student, always curious. He loved to think, to question, and to understand. Learning was not something he did, it was who he was. He was also an idealist, a trait not always easy to maintain for someone who stayed up to date with current events and was so educated in human history and our many failings. His strong faith, the wisdom of ancient and modern philosophers, and what he witnessed in the 1960s and beyond when brave people stood for civil rights and against war were all part of what motivated him to try and effect positive change during his lifetime. Mind over matter. Serendipity brought us to this beautiful town, the wonderful, idyllic world of Gould Academy. In this ideal environment, Marvin maintained his optimism and positive attitude to the end. I think most people who met him would quickly sense the depth of his intellect from the way he truly listened. He was a great listener. And the considerate and thoughtful way he would answer questions with a full measure of his knowledge. His retention and recall of philosophical concepts and historical facts was incredible. He would never present you with alternate facts. If he didn't know an answer to a question, he might try to help you reason through it, maybe offering a historical, philosophical parallel to health. For example, I remember complaining, as a kid will do, about being bored when school was on break. And on one occasion, he said to me something to the effect of, well, you know, Rob, in ancient Rome, kids didn't have a spring break. They pretty much went to school every day. And they had to memorize everything they learned. And if they forgot or got an answer wrong, the teacher would whack them with a stick. Suddenly riding my bike or goofing around outside didn't seem so terrible. I loved every story he told about the Greeks and the Romans. His freshman ancient history class is Gould legend. For the relatable anecdotes about Greek and Roman life and the hilarious conversations that would inevitably develop within a room of 14-year-olds. And for his famous slideshows when he would dim the lights and let us lie down on the floor if we wanted to. The soothing clicks of the slides and his mellow narration allowed many a nap. My dad was a scholar and a teacher, of course. He was a great cook and a solid carpenter and a decent painter as well. He was also, according to all my Gould classmates who downhill skied, the world's slowest ski bus driver. For all his academic credentials, he was very proud of that bus driver's license. Every single time, our family took a trip down to Portland, he would point out the DOT lot on Route 26 where he had his driver's test. One advantage of having teachers for parents is that they also have the summers off. Some of my favorite memories are from the times we didn't have to share my parents with a campus full of students. In the summer when we were little, we would sometimes go car camping up in Rangeley or over to Acadia. We had an impossibly heavy canvas army surplus tent that filled most of the trunk of the car and took at least an hour to set up. I remember my dad banging stakes into the ground, and then he would scrape an actual trench around the whole tent in case it rained. Of course, if it did rain, puddles would still appear on the floor. He would let me carry around the hatchet and throw great armloads of pine needles onto the campfire. The sound of the gasoline-fueled Coleman stove and the smell of coffee brewing in their battered aluminum percolator, it was wonderful. My sister and I had an allowance that for a while was pegged to the cost of a comic book. Marv loved comics too, and sometimes when we brought home a fresh Archie or Daffy Duck, we would sprawl out on the big bed and he would read them to us, our little heads resting on his shoulders. One of his favorites was Uncle Scrooge and the Beagle Boys. He also loved Mad Magazine. My parents bought Newton Tibbetts' old hunting camp up Sunday River Road in 1978. It was our little escape from town, and there were countless great memories made there with friends and family. When we went out there, they would let us kids ride on the car trunk once we left the main road, bouncing up the rough drive over the roots and puddles, sliding and falling and running to jump back on. My dad added a dormer, an outhouse, re-sided the camp with cedar shingles, and expanded the decks with the help of my Uncle Wes. There was no electricity, so they cut lumber with crosscut saws and drove nails by hand. My dad was so big and strong. I loved to hold his hand. The last few years when he was at Schooner, he would get bored, and we'd FaceTime a lot. We would chat while I cooked dinner, or I'd walk around on my phone and show him the cats playing or the flowers and trees blooming down in the sunny south. His short-term memory was fading, and the days kind of blurred for him from one to the next. He called Schooner the school, or the campus. But his long-term memory in that big brain was still strong. We would talk about the old times and things we did together when my sister and I were little, and we would laugh and laugh. One of the memories of him that will be with me forever is how in the evenings around bedtime, when the rest of the family would be heading upstairs to sleep, my dad would be downstairs next to the stereo, relaxing in his creaky wooden rocker, headphones on, a little bowl of crackers or nuts within reach, as he tuned out to some Beethoven or Mahler or folk music. His eyes closed, the very embodiment of serenity and peace. I've always understood how lucky we were to have such a kind, gentle, and wise father. I'm so grateful to him for the lessons he taught and the love we shared. Thank you, Daddy.
Mind me if I pull this down a little bit. I am grateful to Marlise and to Rob, excuse me, I'm not going to do this all day, for this opportunity. Because I'm so grateful for having my path join Marvin's path for just a few years. When Marlise asked me if I'd speak about his life here at Gould, and I said, I don't know. That's a lot, Marlise. She said, well, let me help you out. She said, I want to know about his love of history, which we've already heard a fair amount about, his teaching and related chores at Gould Academy, and his silly ways. Well, they're all wrapped up together, you understand that? So let's go to the love of history. Well, as anyone who's had graduate study in the age before computers and AI knows, that the mother's milk of any grad student is the 3x5 card, which I just happen to have with me today. History, of course, according to my thesis advisor, is the mother of the liberal arts. And so to the historian lies a heavy weight indeed, because you have to satisfy all the other liberal arts in your analyses and in your understandings. Marvin's dissertation shows a little about the depth of this scholarship. He dealt with the 16th and 17th century Dutch explorations and cartography of the interior of Africa as it was known in those days. And I think Marlise said that was the title, and go figure. You don't have to figure too long. He was extremely proud of his Dutch heritage. And of course the 16th, 17th centuries were the high point of the commercial empire that the Dutch built at that time. And it certainly wasn't a subject for anyone who was indifferent, if you talk about love of history. Now, when it comes to teaching, a big gulf between studying the explorers of Africa and 14-year-olds at Gould Academy, who weren't necessarily all that interested in cartography in Africa. As a matter of fact, in order to pull this together, I did ask for information from some graduates who had Marvin in class and faculty who worked with him. One of the former students, who I know quite well, when I asked, so what was it like in freshman history, ancient medieval history? The answer I got from her was, geez, Dad, are you serious? I don't remember anything about my freshman year. It was spent mostly chasing, name redacted, boy. And I thought, all right, we can extrapolate a little bit, and so we may have to really dig for someone who really remembers something that happened Lord knows how many years ago. Well, as it turned out, there were some memories from other students. One remembers that, I think the word was mellow, at the mellow presentations, which sometimes caused little 14-year-olds to nod off, or to be thinking about their lunch, or perhaps looking at each other, who knows. But in this particular case, the squirrels, as Marvin called these kids, particularly the boys, got a little out of hand. And so he really lowered the boom. Yeah, he lowered the boom. He gave them the what fors. They quieted right down. And this former student said, but what they didn't see was that as he turned back to the blackboard, this wry grin began to spread across his face. He played the game just the way a stern schoolmaster is supposed to play the game. Even when he tried to be mean, he couldn't be mean. Oh, it was great. He soon learned that the lecture wasn't probably even close to good choice for these kids. And so Marvin went on to a projects and pictures mode. He had a closet stacked with tape decks, with videotapes of everything you can imagine. And in fact, one, as a former student mentioned to me, was quite frank about the culture and life of Paleolithic peoples that the boys giggled about and the girls were quite embarrassed to watch. Talk about wry humor. So in Latin it was a little different. It was hard to come up with a project, but it was always a time to wear togas. And so there were toga days, and one Latin student who really turned out to be not a Latin student had real difficulty with conjugations and declensions and the infinite amount of grammar rules in Latin. And Marvin was so patient with him. He was so patient and so kind. And this kid remembered, I looked at him and he was trying so hard. And then I noticed his hand. It was under the lapel of his corduroy blazer. And he was rubbing it. He said, I don't think at the end of that year there was a bit of ribbing left in that lapel. That was his way of containing himself as he tried to teach Latin to me. This was the patient man we all knew, wasn't it? As far as ancient medieval history, the last bit were the projects, one of which was a medieval siege weapon of some kind, like a catapult. And they put the thing together, and he was a good carpenter. They put the thing together in the classroom. Everybody enjoyed it. People stopped by for miles around to see Marvin's catapult. And from what I understand, it found a second home in the loft of the barn on Elm Street as a prized part of Marvin's museum, which is where he stored most of what he had used in class, and Lord knows what else as well. I was told this morning that it took a long time to clean that place out. So as teaching goes, his most animated moments were when he joined with the freshman 4-point to Germany. Here, Marvin was in his element. He was in old cities with histories that went back to the Romans and perhaps beyond. And he used every single visit as an opportunity to deliver many, many words about each site. The most animated of all was the day that he visited the Castle Church in Wittenberg, where Martin Luther had posted the 95 Theses in criticism of the Roman Catholic Church and its hierarchy. They say that it was pretty hard to pull him down after that. He couldn't have asked for a better place to visit to get some of this out. It was apparently pretty remarkable. That takes care of teaching except for one thing. He never stopped. He loved teaching senior college. He had a course called Great Decisions, which was based on an actual program in which students get readings, and it's a seminar approach. And he had a pretty good sign-up in those courses year in and year out. One former student remembers that she never missed a one. And as the years went on, her hearing began to fail. Marvin knew that, and he made sure that she got all the deliveries and that she got to listen to everything. But one day when she thanked him for being so patient with her, Marvin said, "You know, I've been thinking about a program in silent movies. What do you think about that?" Oh, she got a kick out of that. So do I. Other than that, on campus, what can we talk about? His athletic commitment. All good private boarding school students must have an athletic commitment to fulfill. And so Marvin did. He filled on each season, and I'm wearing Marvin's uniform no matter whether it was spring, summer, winter, or fall. Blue Oxford cloth shirt, the chinos, something on the feet that would perhaps protect them, a sweater in season, or maybe the old green parka that he wore for, I don't know, generations. That was Marvin's athletic uniform. If it was at Sunday River, with his clipboard, freezing, while all the people in the latest apparel danced around him, Marvin was standing there in his green parka. If it was in soccer, where he had to come out onto the field with the last few seconds of every period and count down with his clock.
Yeah.
Count down loudly, which it was hard for him. While the game is going on in its usual chaotic high school way, Marvin is out in the middle, walking around, counting down to the end of the period. And then in the spring was time for lacrosse. Marvin was the JV timer. He was the JV timer. Dressed the same. Didn't have to go out on the field, I don't think, quite as often. But he did remember one thing, and that was that on one particular year, the Gould JV lacrosse team had as midfielders, 2 Korean kids and a Japanese kid. And their names were Jung, Sung, and Hiro, which Marvin considered were the unsung heroes. So he and the coaches kind of enjoyed that, and he did good for the team even more than they perhaps wanted to be. Yeah. So that was Marvin's athletic commitment, and I don't think he ever got a letter, but he certainly got a lot of thank yous. Back on campus, to continue something that's already been brought up today, the Reach Out program was Marvin's creation. And its big interest was social justice. He had kids writing letters to Amnesty International on behalf of prisoners of conscience. They collected money for worthwhile programs and projects. Every year on Martin Luther King Day, Marvin had the assembly. And you can imagine the crux of it. He usually read excerpts from the I Have a Dream speech. You could tell that period, which in his life was the same as it was in mine, really struck him deeply, It would stick with him for the rest of his life, as it has with anyone who was a young adult in the 1960s. And then came flashpoints. Flashpoints occurred weekly for maybe a term. I can't remember if it went all year long or not. Flashpoints was a program based on college bowl or high school bowl, in which the dormitories, I think by floors, had different teams, and they would meet at morning assembly. And Marvin was the quiz master. And so the questions would be thrown out to the teams. And Marvin, through it all, was as calm and unrattled as anyone, despite the answers that came out. And a good many of them would hardly get by the censors, actually, as the kids really used their imaginations to come up with answers. Flashpoints, it was indeed a high point for everybody's week. This was his creation. It was his creation. And the kids really took it seriously in a way. But there were times when the entire assembly just simply broke up because of the answers. But yet he never rippled a bit. When it came to advising, something that we all did, something we were assigned, he was probably best known as Dr. O, the chef. People signed up for Dr. O because they wanted advice, because they liked him, and they also signed up because he could really cook. He could really put a meal together. And he was also very patient. He was an excellent listener. More of that a little later on when I read one of them. Around the neighborhood, well, at Christmas time was Holy Bowl distribution. And no matter where the office was on campus, he delivered them to the business office. He delivered them to the faculty room. They've already gotten the description of these oil balls. That they were so good. They were so good. Yes, indeed. He took part in neighborhood activities and dinners, always bringing good food, which he made, obviously. And in one particular case, which didn't occur right here in the neighborhood, but at some point I had pointed Marvin to a little book by Farley Mullen, The Boat That Wouldn't Float, which was about a yacht that Mowat had put together in Newfoundland, and they took to the Great Montreal Expo of '67. It was a funny book, lots of good stuff, lots of good Newfoundland accents. And Marvin read that. He just loved it. Well, he and Tina went on a trip to Nova Scotia one year. And when they returned, Marvin brought me a photo of the same boat that Mowat had put together and sailed. It was now up on the bank next to the road somewhere in Nova Scotia with a handwritten sign. Happy Adventure, Farley Mowat.
Yep.
And Marvin took that picture and brought it back. He was so tickled. I saw that boat. I said, did you get on it? And he said, no, I didn't get on it. I saw it, and I want you to have this picture. And I still have it in my copy of The Boat That Wouldn't Float. That was Marv. Now, we get to the other part of Marley's instruction. His silly little ways. Well, we don't have enough time today. We're all going to get very hungry. And so I'll just mention 2 or 3. He turned out to be quite a mountain hiker. And he had no lack of companions here at Gould Academy. And on one particular trip, they went to Mount Washington, and up at the summit, I'm guessing near the terminus of the Cog Railway, there was a shop, a place to get out of the weather, buy things, and Marvin shows up with this candy bar, energy bar. And he said, you see this? He said, this is real mountain food. This is real mountain food. He says, I'm going to take this back to Ouwinga. He's sitting here. He's already spoken. Marvin had names for everybody. Ouwinga just happened to be Rob, his was going to take this cane back. I asked Rob today, he said, I don't remember ever seeing it. And I said, well, it probably never made it all the way down the mountain. And on another occasion, they were hiking in the presidentials, and it was a special day, and there was a festival taking place in the mountains, in a ravine, a glen. And there was music. People had brought formal musical gear. They enjoyed it very much. And Marvin thought, this is amazing. It's amazing. He said, I should do this more often. Well, this was an occasion that happened once a year. But he kind of got the impression, that's a great place to go when you go up, because look at what's going on all the time. Nobody bothered to explain to Marvin, no, it didn't happen all the time. Only now and then. Oh, what else have we got here on our historical cards? Oh, yes. A secret he found in the mailbox at Gould Academy. Victoria's secret. He was taken to checking out the Victoria's Secret. I'm guessing he knew every month when it would show up. And decided it was just important to just to keep up with the news and fashion. They let it drop at that. And then one other item that had to do with Marv out and around, and that was the synthetic a priori. Marv loved philosophy, and always favorite period in history probably ended, his periods in history, I'm going to say ended with the Age of Reason. Anything back to the Greeks was fine with him. And the synthetic a priori, or the synthetic posteriori, or mind and body dualism, these all being works of philosophers nobody ever talked about except at party time. Neighborhood party time. You could count on Marv at some point to pull them out and begin to expound on them until people left the room. that was it. So, all in all, I just want to close up with a couple pieces from folks I managed to get in touch with. And here was one, a faculty remembrance. He was one of the kindest, gentlest, and giving persons we've ever known. Marvin always gave his time and attention to those who were in some sort of need, taking time to listen and to advise in the most thoughtful ways. He had a way of making the most situations seem not quite so dire. He had a great sense of humor, which he could artfully, with a gleam in his eye, add to the mix of any conversation. The next piece was from one of his advisees. I've been thinking a lot about Dr. Rall and the impact he had on me during our time at Gould. I'd be grateful if you would share this with the people there. Some of my strongest memories from high school are tied to Dr. O's kindness. He was my advisor, and the dinners he hosted at his home meant more than he probably ever knew. Being far from my own home, those evenings, the real home-cooked meals, honest conversation, and the sense of belonging were grounding in a way that stayed with me at Gould and beyond. I also remember a moment when I was going through a very difficult time. Dr. O sat with me, and he reminded me that humans are one of the most adaptable species on Earth. He told me that although things felt overwhelming, I would adjust, and I would survive, and I would come out better off than ever before. It was simple advice, but it was exactly what I needed at the time. It's something I've carried with me ever since. He had a quiet way of showing up. He listened without judging. He offered wisdom without ego. And he made space for his students to feel seen. I still have the silver cuff bracelet that he made for me, one of the beautiful pieces he produced. It's become a reminder of his generosity and the care he put into every single thing he seemed to do. I'll always remember Dr. O for the warmth, the steadiness, and the ways he helped make Gould feel a little more like home. I think that's a good way to close this part off.
Hi. Thank you all so much for coming. So I have really been struggling with what to say, simply because there's so much about him, which I think everybody kind of knows, and how to show it all. So, in his honor of his slideshows that everybody fell asleep with, I made one of our own, which we can have play, I think, just kind of through my speech. So, Dad was one of 6 kids born to Menko and Joan. His youngest years were in Denver, where he passed his time building balsa wood models in little canyons. He was curious, and his sister told me he got into quite a bit of trouble that she would just get him out of. He would continue to tease her. He would make his creative ingenuity and his 12-year-old mindset stuck with him his whole life. I think all of you know that. His sense of humor was young. His Uncle John couldn't be here today, but he told me they had a weird, untranslatable vocabulary they shared. He called Mom Coochie Guada for over 50 years. He really loved a nickname. And many of you have been lucky enough to have heard that Ouwinga giggle, that really genuine, pure, joyful giggle. Dad loved to learn, so it took him to school and off to Trinity, then Calvin College, and eventually to Indiana University and a PhD. And it was there in the world of higher learning that he met his perfect match. A fiery, energetic, independent Dutch girl who would often recall that he was the most handsome man she had ever seen. They were total opposites, but also exactly right. He cooked and did the grocery shopping. He wasn't so much a maintenance man, but he would always find a solution. Like when he super glued my glasses together and sent me up to 2nd grade where they remained stuck to my face for hours. When Mom would send him off to mow the lawn, he would come in so excited because he finished, but he saved around the dandelions because they were so pretty. Mom would roll her eyes, look at him sternly, and then laugh. What a wonderful gift to find such joy in the simplest of places. It reminds me he would love these flowers, the colors, the bright. When I was little, I was all about my dad. He was the sweet one, literally bringing candy bars when Mom wasn't looking. He would make up word games and riddles. We'd watch the Irish Rovers and the Muppets. I remember catching a glimpse of Benny Hill late night, and I'll never forget how much he laughed. Late into the night, I would hear that rocker creak, sometimes so cozy. And there's something about falling asleep knowing Dad was there, protecting the house, puffing on his pipe, and we would sit in the living room. We had matching rocking chairs. Rob and I with our comic books, as Mom and Dad shared the newspaper, the coffee table always full of magazines, philosophical tunes, scientific, historical, and a few Mother Jones Mad magazines as well. And of course we snacked. He and I were cheese and crackers. He called me Snack Mouse, and we would quietly nibble, and just sitting there together would fill me with peace. He did take up jogging briefly, tried a few fad diets, but decided it wasn't for him. He'd take Slim Fast for breakfast and lunch, and then after 3, it was kind of a free-for-all. Just sitting with him filled me with peace. It's a peace I've struggled with my whole life. He was always supporting me in quiet ways. He was so empathetic, and I dare say we shared a special part of his soul. where he just knew what I needed. What I was feeling, my insecurities, my fears, and my worries, they were so much like his. All of a sudden, he would give me a card or a gift, a reminder to celebrate being me, the person I am, because that's the most wonderful thing to be. When I quit drinking, he passed me a silver dollar each year in September for my sterling achievement. He would pick me up anywhere. He was always at every bus station when I wanted to be home. In 7th grade, he drove me and a friend in a snowstorm to a Bon Jovi concert when our ride failed. He was such a happy Opa. He loved having the tights, the little lads for sleepovers, big bowls of popcorns, and trips to the movie store, where he ultimately bought out the entire inventory of VHS tapes when they closed. He loved a good horror movie and the not so good. He found as much joy in The Shining and Monty Python as he did in Sharknado. He took the boys. He loved to travel. Mom would take the boys to Bar Harbor in Acadia, to Burlington, and to Shelburne. Always a teaching and learning vacation for more and more knowledge to continue to fill that brilliant mind. Dad was creative. He wrote a book, 101 Uses for a Dead Language, that he mocked up with his shrill illustrations and bound, and he sent it out, but no takers. Publishers obviously missed it. He took up silversmithing for a while, rings and bracelets for me and pendants for Mom. He did some stained glass and found his real passion for painting. His basement had a mad scientist vibe with paints and plants and a flamethrower somewhere scattered in. The bookshelves and encyclopedia collections he just couldn't let somebody throw away. And his baking, Oli Bolin and Danish at Christmas, and those cookies he would share with the students. Birthday cakes, brownies for me and my friends. We'd sit at the kitchen table on Elm Street giggling as he fulfilled our secret munchies. He loved talking to us, to students, to children, to everyone. He was always interested in learning and listening. He would stay quiet, silently mulling something over that days later he would bring up with a carefully considered question or solution. He really listened, a master of contemplation. He supported and served the Historical Society and Library. I remember bean suppers and cookie walks here in this very church. I also remember sitting in that very back pew so we could sneak out if we started giggling, or so Dad could open a cough drop without making too much noise. Dad had an eclectic group of friends. I look at all of you and I see such a wonderful creation of our community and people who cared for it. From the ladies at the IGA register to the bank manager and students, faculty, and church members, he would greet many of the same faces on his daily trips to the post office and store. It was his afternoon routine, and after Mom passed, he stayed busy with his incredible community of friends here in Bethel, the church, senior college. Dad believed in standing up for others. He would march for hunger, protest racism, and speak out for the vulnerable, and that has inspired me and generations of others to take part in serving the community. It's what has brought me the most peace, to be unselfish and to humble. His focus on helping others was just how he and Mom lived their lives, and I'm so proud to have it memorialized in the Ouwinga Citizenship Award at Gould. Named for Dr. Marvin T. Ouwinga, a history teacher at Gould for 30 years, this is awarded to a member of the Gould student body who embraces the spirit in which both the Ouwingas live their lives through acts of selflessness and thoughtful humanitarianism. He slayed some demons, but it was all knowledge that he could save up and ultimately to help someone else and to share with the world. My Uncle John told me a story of how his nephew Ben, at the age of 2, dumped out one of his classic slideshows for history class at Gould. He was a little nervous looking at Dad, who simply put the pile back into the tray and said, "This could be another way of looking at it." And that's how we spent the last 4 years. Dad and I found a new mindset to continue to find that knowledge, communication, and happiness as challenges arose. Life got simpler. We lived in each moment. His gummy bears and PBS, bringing as much joy. We spent much time together the past 4 years, as much as we did in my first. When I would show up to visit, he would say, "There she is," eyes twinkling, face literally glowing. He started looking to me for reassurance. and I was humbled to give it. To give him the security he had always given to me. His incredible faith and trust in me was heartbreaking and filling at the same time. He was safe and well cared for, and he felt that. And once he relaxed into it, he gained back a carefree attitude that only comes with youth or the wisdom of age. We'd go on many adventures to the bookstore and the Big Lots for licorice and popcorn. And then we could just look at each other and laugh, and life was good. At the end of his beautiful life, Dad remained surrounded by his paintings, his photos of family, and his favorite chair. People were so kind as he was his sweet self, still forming connections and bringing joy. I'm told this last Christmas, the tree went up in Mineral Springs where he was living at his request, and he would sing carols in Latin and Dutch. His deep baritone pronounced for maximum effect. He and Mom always loved to sing. Dad was ready to be with Mom, and I have no sadness about him being with her, but I miss him. This past week looking at photos has been a gift. His smile is constantly in my head, and he is in me. The minute I would see my dad, I would buzz around like a crazy woman, and the minute I would see Dad, it would just stop. We would look at each other and love and just laugh and feel peace and just being in the same room. It was like I was little again. It didn't matter what he couldn't remember, because that love, that pride and peace he gave me, I will never forget. Dad taught me many lessons. He taught me how to think of life as a world of constant learning. He taught me that leading with love will always take you down the right road. He thought, I think about that now, and I am confident if I think, what would Marvin do? It will always be the most thoughtful and kind answer. It will always be the right way for me. I found something I wrote when Dad had a heart attack 10 years ago, and I kind of summarized this. I guess I could have just written that, but I have that Ouwinga oration sort of warrior thing going on. So anyway, my dad has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. My earliest memories are buying presents for children in need for Christmas and helping house and gather clothing for a family that had nowhere to go. His study is adorned with photos of sponsored children, piles of charitable requests, and notes on community suppers to cook for, along with a treasure trove of ancient historical goodies and thick philosophical novels, as well as the cheesiest horror movies of all time, and a collection of pipes, which will no longer get any use. He started a community outreach program at Gould where he taught for 30 years. Known as Dr. O or Flash, depending on the years, he quietly wove his gift for helping better the world around us into that school community with little fanfare. And when he was retired, an award was named after him and my mother. I couldn't be prouder to be my parents' daughter if I tried. They have taught me that through their actions, that giving to others is the best gift I can give myself. That kindness costs nothing, yet changes lives. That deep love and attention never strayed from home either. My dad's compassion encompasses communities, spans the world, and yet it has always remained strong in giving to my brother and I, my mom, our family and friends, and the many students he taught. Whether he knew you or not, he would lend a hand, a dish, a gentle push to get you back up on your feet. His cookies and cakes are legendary. His sweet smile and strong hugs melt away the worries that the outside world throws at me. He doesn't judge or question. He will never let me feel alone and has quietly guided me through many a tough time. I never thought his heart might clog. I only thought it might explode from all the love it holds. Go forth and be kind, my friends. Thank you for sharing.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Just grace and taught my heart to be, and grace my fears relieved. we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us this far, and grace will lead us home. And we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first began. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see.
I invite you again to join me in prayer. Oh God, our strength and our Redeemer, giver of life and conqueror of death, we praise you with humble and grateful hearts. With trust in your mercy and wisdom, we entrust Marvin to your eternal care. We thank you for your steadfast love for him through all the days of his life. We thank you for all that Marvin was to those who loved him, for his kindness, his gentleness, his intelligence, his humor, his generosity, his deep care for others. We thank you for his faithfulness to the Church of Jesus Christ, for his service here, for his love of this community, for the many ways he shared his gifts as a teacher, historian, artist, baker, and friend. We thank you, too, for the compassion that shaped his life, for the ways he cared about those who were vulnerable, overlooked, and in need, and for the quiet, steady grace with which he moved through this world. And in this Easter season, we thank you that for Marvin, death itself is past, that he has entered the home where all your people gather in peace. Keep us in communion with all your faithful people in every time and place, and help us to live in the hope and promise of the risen Christ, until that day when we too are gathered into your eternal love, through Jesus Christ, who taught us this prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. As we go from this place, may we carry with us the memory of Marvin, his kindness, his gentleness, his wisdom, his humor, his love of his community, and his care for others. And may the God who held Marvin through all the days of his life hold him now in peace and hold all of us in love. May God comfort us in our grief, strengthen us in hope, and give us grace for the days ahead. May the blessing of God, Creator, Christ, Holy Spirit, remain with us always. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm
music especially. So Marlies picked this song to send Marvin home, and you should all sing along because he sure loved your books. From this valley they say you are going. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. For they say you are taking away the sunshine that has brightened our pathways a while. Come and sit by my side if you love me. Do not hasten to bid me adieu. Just remember the Red River Valley and the cowboy who loves you so true. Do you think of the valley you're leaving? Oh, how lonely and sad it will be. Do you think of the time your heart's still breaking and the pain you have caused it to me? Come and sit by my side if you love me. Do not hasten to bid me adieu. Just remember the Red River Valley and the cowboy who loves you so true. They will bury me where you have wandered, near the hills where the daffodils grow. When you're gone from the Red River Valley, for I can't live without you, I know. Come and sit by my side if you love me. Do not hasten to bid me adieu. Just remember the Red River Valley and the cowboy who loves you so true. Just remember the Red River Valley and the cowboy who loves you so true.
And now I'd like to invite everyone to the reception, which will take place right here in the adjoining chapel. And I do want to just mention that there is a bathroom over here on this floor, right directly across the chapel, but there are two more downstairs, right. If you take the stairs back from this corner, and then you go down and go around and through the kitchen, there are two more bathrooms down there as well. So now let us gather for fellowship in the chapel. Let us go in peace and be led out in joy. Amen.